What's up, folks? Thanks for joining me again. Last week we discussed how we're in a battle with Satan, and it's of utmost importance that we're keeping our eyes on Jesus, because as we have our eyes on Jesus, we're changing and we're able to stand when Satan attacks us in whatever way he attacks us, whether he's trying to bring guilt and shame, whether he's tempting us, whether we've fallen and he's telling us that we're worthless. No matter what it is, we have to look to Jesus to continue to overcome here on earth, even though we have that salvation. And we talked about, as we look to Jesus, the Holy Spirit will transform us into his very image from glory to glory. So every time we look to Jesus, we are taking on his attributes. That means we're taking on his courage when we look to him during our fearful situations. We're taking on his strength when we're feeling weak if we're looking to him. We take on his self-control if we're failing in an area and we continue to look to him. He's imparting that self-control where we can overcome. He is even imparting health to us as we look to him for our health. And we looked at all those things last week. And again, it's so important that we keep our eyes on Jesus. But there's another reason that we're really wanting to do this. We're wanting to change and live a holy life, and it's so other people will see Jesus in us. And when we witness to them, they'll actually say, "Hey, that person's a pretty good guy. He has a changed lifestyle," or a good girl, she has a changed lifestyle. I believe I trust what they're saying, and it may draw them to Jesus Christ. Look what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 10, 23 through 24. He says, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being." So Paul's telling them here, all things are lawful for us. We talked about that last week. We have been married to Jesus into a new covenant. We live in grace today. We're no longer under the law. We're not trying to work for God's favor, blessing, salvation, etc. We are receiving it through grace, the unearned, undeserved favor for God. So all things are truly lawful for a Christian, but all things are not helpful. A Christian living that sinful lifestyle, that's not good for them. Is that helping anybody? That's what edify means. You're building people up. So if you're living a sinful lifestyle, you're actually hurting somebody. Sin leads to death. It's destroying a relationship, or if you're in a sinful lifestyle with unbelievers or other Christians, instead of building them up, you're actually keeping them in a cycle of defeat. And that's why Paul says, "Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being." Getting a little tongue-tied there. We're here, and as we live that holier lifestyle, as we look to Jesus, others will see that, and we can use that to build each other up. We can use that to help each other overcome sinful situations. We point each other to Jesus. Now, if we're out there doing the same things they are, if they're an unbeliever, we're not pointing them to Jesus. They're looking at that saying, "Well, I don't need that. I can live this lifestyle without Jesus. I worry just as much as them." If we're not looking to Jesus, we're not changing. And they see that, and they won't change. And we're also, if we're living that sinful lifestyle with other Christians, then we're not building them up. Somewhere sin is destroying something. Again, it destroys relationships. It destroys your strength. It destroys your witness. It destroys all sorts of things. Paul, he even talks in 1 Corinthians 9, which, we've been looking in 1 Corinthians, kind of jumping around here, but we're still hitting a lot of good points. In 1 Corinthians 9, he talks about the importance of trying to run this Christian race the correct way so people will see Christ in us. He says in 1 Corinthians 9, 24 through 27, "Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown." So Paul is saying, hey, we know we've obtained salvation through Jesus Christ, and we have that. We're righteous by faith. And he says people who are trying to gain something, it's like a race, it's a competition. Look at our world today. Look how many people's trying to earn something, whether it's money, whether it's really a sport or something. They're trying to earn some type of ring. He's saying we need to run this race as if we're earning that prize. Now listen to me. We're not earning it. We get the prize through our faith in Jesus Christ. But we know we're getting it. And because we know that, we should live this life showing that, though. we actually run out of a standing of victory already. We've already won. It ain't us striving to earn the prize. We're running as if we've already won it because we have, and we're showing who we are in Jesus as we run. And that's why it says in 25, everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. They do it to obtain a perishable crown. These people in the world today, I don't care how many championship rings you got, it means nothing. It's going to sit on the shelf. It's not going to do anything for you. You got a little bragging rights. You can have some memories. We are getting an imperishable crown in Jesus. What it is, we're obtaining everlasting life. It is only through Jesus we get this. I don't care how many state championship rings you got. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much status you have. None of that's getting you to heaven. It may be giving you things here on earth, but it's perishable things, things that will not last. And again, that's why Paul, we talked last week, was telling us it's so important we're pointing people to Jesus and we're not getting caught up in all this stuff in the world. Now, there's nothing wrong with winning a ring or something like that, but we got to know Jesus is the main thing. As we partake in these things, we're pointing people to Jesus as we do it. Now, look what Paul says next, knowing he's going to get that imperishable crown. He says, therefore I run, though not with uncertainty. Thus I fight, not as one who beats the air. Paul is saying, I'm not running as if I don't think I'm going to get this. Paul knows he's getting it. That's the same with us. We know we're getting our salvation through Jesus Christ, so we live this life knowing we're going to get it. And he says, I fight, I'm striving to live right, not as one just beating the air. You know, you're fighting nothing. He's saying, I'm not wasting my time. I know I'm getting the prize. And look, he's fixing to show you why us living this life, you know, this life where we're, even though we're not under the law, but we're still trying to follow that law. We're not wasting our time. Because he says in 27, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection. Now he's talking about his flesh. Get in Romans. He shows how you do that. You discipline your body as you look to Jesus. You strive to live right. When you fail, you look to Jesus. As you look to Jesus, you become like him and you start to overcome. We discipline our bodies the more we look to Jesus. And of course, we're taking on his self-control so we control ourselves more. But we strive to live right. Now, why are we doing this? He says, least when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. He is saying, now he's not saying, I'm going to get disqualified going to heaven. He's saying that when they look at me, my ministry is true to them. They're not looking at me and seeing somebody who says, yeah, I'm a Christian, but living the exact same lifestyle of them, saying, hey, you need to be saved from your sin. This is wrong. Yet they're going to go out there and live that same lifestyle, okay? I don't mean you ain't falling into it from time to time. You ain't needing a savior, but it's showing if you're living that lifestyle, those people's not going to listen to you. It's killed your light. It's killed your witness, and we don't want to kill our witness. And what's sad, there's many Christians today, they won't even tell other people about Jesus because they feel that way. They know they've been failing around them, so they won't even bring Jesus up. But we can't do that either, because if you're not looking to Jesus, you're not changing. Remember how I said at that ball game, I got a little ill, just keep hearing all this ball stuff pointed toward these kids. And I'm like, no, it needs to be Jesus. We need to be pointing our kids to Jesus, and that's the only way they're going to change. And hopefully them people hearing that, they'll change too as they look to Jesus. All right, Paul, he don't just put it here. We're going to jump to 1 Corinthians 10. Look what he says right here. He says, therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. You've probably heard that. Everything we do, again, is pointing to him. Everything. Now, in this eating and drinking, he was just talking about how if you're eating something and another believer is weak and doesn't think you're supposed to eat that, he's saying don't do that around them. Even though all food is clean, this is really more of a thing that was happening between the Jewish people and the Gentiles, and some of the Jews who learned that they could eat anything, and it was causing offense to each other. And he says, don't sin against your brother because they're weaker than that. You need it on your own. But he says in 32, give no offense. That means don't sin against a brother or sister or whoever is finna show here. It says, give no offense either to the Jews or to the Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Paul says, I'm not sinning against them. I'm trying not to sin against myself. I am showing them Jesus, and I'm trying to do that for the profit of many, that they may accept Jesus. Remember last week we looked at, he says, don't put your wife above your spouse, above Jesus. Don't put your children, we talked about this, don't put your children above Jesus. Don't put all this worldly stuff above Jesus. Games, hobbies, work, whatever above Jesus. That's not profiting anybody. It's not helping anybody. All you're doing is you're being confused just like everybody else, and you're confusing everybody else. We know Jesus is the main thing, and as we live in this world and partake in those things, we're able to show those people who think this is the world, we're like, no, Jesus is. No, this is fun for a little while, but Jesus is the main thing. And that's what Paul is, that's what he's really showing here. All right, so we're wanting to point to him so we can edify each other, and we can really build each other up. Now, if we don't keep our focus on Jesus, we talked about this last week, gonna look at it a little bit now. If we don't keep our focus on Jesus, then there's a good chance we're gonna get caught up in the same distractions. We'll get caught up in the same things, and before we know it, we're doing something or acting in a way we shouldn't be acting. There's a good chance also, again, we'll fall into sin. We're doing something in a way we shouldn't be acting. Look, I want to show you what Paul teaches us in 1 Corinthians 10. We're going to look at verse 1 through 13 now. We're kind of jumping back a little bit. Look what he says. Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea. All were baptized into Moses in the cloud and the sea. All ate the same spiritual food. Paul's talking about the Israelites. They had the cloud that went before them in the desert when they were walking. They went through the Red Sea. They was eating the spiritual food. He's talking about the children of God. He says they all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with most of them, God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. So the Israelites, they kept disobeying God, and they were being scattered all over the place. They had trouble all the time. That's why they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. All sorts of crazy stuff were happening to them, even though God was doing miracles. Hey, Moses was splitting rocks and water was coming out of it, life-giving water when he would hit a rock in the desert. And by the way, that rock was Jesus. It was showing Jesus in those areas. They had a cloud that kept them cool during the day in the desert, so they weren't burning up. At night, they had a pillar of fire that kept them warm. They were seeing all these miracles of God, these amazing things, yet they were still messing up. God wasn't pleased with them because they still were not trusting God. They were getting caught up in their situations and everything else that was going on in the world, and they were having trouble. Now look, we got Jesus. Even when we get caught up in this, we're going to see in a little bit, we have forgiveness, we have grace, and we can look to him and get right back on track. But this was a time that was not the case. Many of them fell away and all sorts of stuff was happening to them. But what Paul is showing is how easy it is to fall. Look at this next part. Said, now these things became our example, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted, and do not become idolaters as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. So Paul's saying, he says, look, these were God's children. They were his children, yet they were lusting after evil things. All they were thinking about, what are we going to eat? What are we going to drink? What are we going to play? Ain't that our world today? It's all about what are we going to do? What enjoyment am I going to get out of it? And he's saying, hey, don't be like them. They were an example. Look what happened to these guys. He said, nor let us commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell. Nor let us tempt or test Christ as some of them also tempted and were destroyed by serpents. It says, nor complain as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the end of the ages have come. So he's saying, don't be like them. And ain't this sad? Don't complain. How many of us don't complain? Look at all these things. How many of us haven't tempted? We know Jesus is everything, but we know, we tempt him in different ways. Sexual immorality, we've been talking about how hard that is of something that can grasp a hold of you, whether it's lust, porn, anything else. He's telling us not to fall into these, and he's showing us, look what happened to them. That sin ended up destroying them. All right, and then look at this next part. It's what I wanted to show you. Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. This is what I'm getting at. Don't think you can handle this world on your own. Don't think you can dabble around in sin and everything's going to turn out all right. You're going to come out of it. Therefore, let him who thinks he stand take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man. Hey, don't be surprised when you fail. I know that's a weird saying, but it's true. He just showed us all them Israelites, God's people. Have you ever heard people say, if I saw all them miracles, there ain't no way I'd have turned from him. If I saw him doing all that stuff, I'd trust him with everything. Hey, we're just like them. They were common and we are too. Now, we're God's children in Jesus, though. But as far as just being a human, we're the exact same as them. And that's why he's saying, all you thinking, oh, I would never turn away from him. He says, don't think that way, lest you will fall. No temptation. It's so easy to fall. It's so easy to get caught up in everything else and end up failing in a way we should not be failing. I've kind of been thinking about it. All the Old Testament saints, you be looking at them. Look at David, committed adultery and then tried to cover it up and killed a man. Noah, Noah was saved. He's righteous in his generation. He's perfect in his generation. God accounted him as righteousness. He gets drunk, passes out. Naked. It's a whole ordeal, whole mess. You got Moses is being too ugly to the crowd. He wasn't showing grace, doesn't get to enter the promised land. Every one of them had their mistakes. Abraham, tried to take the promise into his own hands, slept with the maidservant, had Ishmael. They was having trouble all throughout the whole time. And even that, look at what the Bible says happens in Matthew 26. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus was, they was fixed to come get him. He had done been betrayed. He was praying in the garden, and he asked the disciples, hey, watch and pray with me. They couldn't do it. They kept falling asleep. And he goes to them, he says, what, you can't even watch with me 1 hour? And then he says, the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Jesus' closest buddies couldn't even hang. They fell. And then look what happens later. Hey, you talking about you had people denying him, wasn't going to go up there with him, running in fear and worry. They're all over the place. It is, and then we think, hey, we're never supposed to mess up. We're never supposed to fail. Here's the thing. For us not to fall, we've got to constantly look to Jesus. Look, that's why Peter showed us right here, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him steadfast in the faith. He's coming all the time. He's attacking Christians. He's coming after us. He wants us to fall. He wants us to be weak. And it says, be sober. Now, that means don't be drunk. If you ain't drunk, ain't no telling what you'll do. Be sober, though, is you're not caught up in the fog of the things of this world. You're not caught up in your hobbies more than Jesus. You're not caught up in this sports intensity like the rest of the world. You're not caught up in your achievements like everything else. You're sober. You know Jesus is everything. You're being vigilant. That means you're working hard. You're striving to do right because you know Satan, he's trying to get you. And again, he wants to devour you. This is why it's so important. We looked a little bit at this last week. He wants you to worry all the time. He wants you to be fearful all the time. He wants you to be sick all the time. He wants you to think you're unworthy to spread the gospel, so you won't spread the gospel at all. That is what he is wanting you to do. He is wanting to make you think you're a failure. That's what he's doing. And you know, I really got to thinking about that. Well, what about the times when we do fail? What about the times when we are striving hard to live right, but we still fear? We don't witness when we know we're supposed to witness. We back down when we've been given an opportunity. What about the times, you know, we fail no matter how hard we're trying? And part of the reason I've been thinking about this, let me tell you a story this week. My daughter Ava, she likes Halloween and all sorts of pranks and stuff. Well, she went to the Family Dollar or wherever, and she bought this. I don't even like holding it. This big old ugly spider looking deal. Now I know it's fake and it's got the little shimmer on it. I didn't know she had bought that. Well, her and her mama decided they was going to hang that from the door of my bathroom on the inside. It's actually hanging on the wall. Well, the door was perched open a little bit, and I had come down the stairs and I had to go to the bathroom. And I went to open that door, and when I opened it, I guess it caught this fake spider, and it swung this spider. It come back. And then I'm right at the door, and all I see is a silhouette of that coming right at my face. And I'm telling you, I don't like, by the way, I don't like spiders, if you didn't know this. I lost it. It come at me, and I thought that spider, a face hugger, was fixing to get me and latch on. I jumped back, and I slipped. I fell, and I threw my arm back, and I hit there's an edge of a wall. I've still got a cut. It cut me all down my arm right here. I had a bad bruise. It was all swollen up, and I fell in the floor. And I'm going to tell you, I was hot. At first, I was scared. I was trying to get away, and then I noticed it was fake. And I started screaming for Ava, telling her to get her butt in here, as I just say it plainly. Probably said some stuff I shouldn't have said, and I was losing it on her. And then she said, Mama told me to do it. Mama told me to do it. Well, then I started yelling at Mama. I'm telling you, 2 women about got whooped that day in this house, or a man was going to get whooped by 2 women. And then I finally cooled off. I'm telling you, we got so tickled about it. But there's something about, I know I just held that. I don't like spiders. You know, that night I'm laying there and all I was thinking about was spiders falling on me. I know that's stupid, but I was. I've never liked them. Sometimes I'll be in bed and I think something's on me and I'll have to get up. That has always been something that is something I fear. Now, I don't know why. I don't fear snakes. It's about the only thing I do fear. I don't really care about nothing else, but there's something about them. And I got to feeling ashamed how I acted after fail. I'm telling you, I was livid. I was screaming, hollering, said some stuff I shouldn't have said. And I said, man, I shouldn't have acted like that out of my fear. You know, we'll do dumb stuff in our fear. And, you know, some people go way worse than that. And I said, well, why are we that way? Why do I have this? Well, God, why won't you take this spider fear away from me? And then I got to think about other times I've been weak. I'm like, man, you know, we're just not at the level we're supposed to be. And then I've been given an opportunity to speak one night at a revival. They're doing something here at the Mantachi Fest one night, and they asked if Joy would sing. And I kind of mentioned to her, and she sings awesome, but a lot of people don't know she gets really nervous when she sings, like super nervous. And I said it, she said, I don't really know if I want to. Of course, I was kind of mean. I'm like, no, you're going to sing. I'm going to tell them you're going to sing. You know, I wasn't being very gracious at all. And of course, she got mad at me because she's like, well, let me decide. And before we know it, we was getting in an argument over doing something for God. And then I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it if you don't want to. We went all back and forth on it. I don't know what's going to happen. We will see, but we're going to let grace, you know, push it out. And I got to thinking, like, you know, she sings like an angel, and it's weird. Satan will get in there and try to stop you dead in your tracks for doing something for Jesus. You know, that's one of the things we looked at last week when it said you need to always have your feet ready to spread the gospel. Satan doesn't want you to do that. Satan wants you to fear all the time. He never wants you to mention Jesus because he knows Jesus is what changes people. We should be spreading Jesus everywhere we go because that is how we change, looking to him. But you know, as I got to think about that weakness, it's amazing. Last Sunday, before I talked about we become these warriors in Jesus, that very morning I heard a preacher talking about when we are weak, Jesus is strong. And we got to remember that. Look at this. 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 10. Paul says, it is doubtless not profitable for me to boast. I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, such a one was called up to the third heaven. So Paul's saying, hey, it don't profit any man to brag. Again, we're nothing. But then he talks about this man who got caught up in the third heaven. Now he's talking about himself, but he's trying not to, I don't know if I guess he's trying not to. He's not bragging about it. The third heaven is the heavenly realm. The first heaven is just you look up and it's the sky. The second heaven is the universe, the stars and everything. And the third heaven is the heavenly realm. So he's saying whether out of body or in a dream or whatever, I don't know, but I was caught up into the third heaven. Says, and I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know, God knows. How he was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words which it is not lawful for a man to utter. So he got caught up in the paradise. He got to see heaven. He's hearing things that he's not lawful for him to speak. He was given a law right here. Now we know when you've been given a law, the sin in your flesh wants to break it. Satan's trying to get you to break it because if you break that law, you're considered no good. You know, the curse can come in. That's the whole thing about sin. So he's been given a law here. Even though he's free, he says it's not lawful for a man to utter these words. He said, of such a one I will boast, yet of myself I will not boast except in my infirmities. For though I might desire to boast, I will not be a fool. For I will speak the truth, but I refrain lest anyone should think of me above what he sees me to be or hears from me. So Paul's saying, he says, if I heard somebody got to go see heaven, man, I'd boast about it. That's awesome they got to do it. But he says, but I'm not going to boast in myself in this. He says, it is a fool to boast in ourselves. He said, but I am going to speak the truth. I'm telling you what happened. But he says, I'm going to refrain from boasting because I don't want people to think more of me than I actually am. And that's what a lot of boasting is. People want you to think they're something special. Nobody cares about your accomplishments. I'm just being honest. They don't, unless it's family or something. Now, we want the best for each other, but people who are braggadocious, you ever heard? I think I said that word right. I don't know where that came from either. But people who brag all the time, man, they just get on your nerves. Like, we good for you. Go on. But he's trying to show, and you know, Paul says, I'm the least of everyone. There is no favoritism with God. Now, God was using Paul. He'll let you, and he'll use you, and you'll see things other Christians haven't seen in ways he's going to use you. But look what Paul says next. He says, "In least I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelation." The abundance of what he got to see and hear. He says, so I'm not lifted up. So he says, so I'm not thinking I'm something special. A thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. So Satan was sending people say thorn in the flesh. Some people say Paul had some type of sickness or infirmity. I don't believe he did. It tells you what he had, a messenger of Satan. A messenger, they speak. And I believe this messenger was trying to tell Paul, look how special you are, start bragging on yourself. Or he was trying to tell Paul, you need to tell everybody what you saw in heaven. You need to tell folks. You know, you need to brag on it. Then he can come against him and call him prideful and all this and try to bring the law in. Or he could have come in bringing up Paul's past transgressions and sins. He could be coming in reminding Paul, oh, you think you're good? You saw heaven. You remember when you was killing these Christians? You remember when you was doing this? Whatever he was doing, that's what Satan does. He's trying to destroy you in some way. Whatever he was doing, he was coming against Paul, and it was reminding Paul he ain't nothing special. All right, so that's what it's showing him. Now look at this next part. Concerning these things, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Paul was asking God, please take this away from me. You ever been there? You ever had some fear and you're like, please take this away from me? Please, I don't want to go through this. You know, Jesus, he even said, if there's any other way, Father, don't let me go through, going to the cross. Now, he went because he loved us. He did it even in fear. But have you ever had Satan keep bringing up a past sin over and over and over again? You're like, please, I don't want to remember this. Please take this away from me. I hate I did this in the past. Let it go. Or have you been tempted to fail and you have failed and it's just constantly there's some sin you're trying to overcome, but you just keep falling into it and you're like, Father, please take this sin away from me. Well, let me tell you something. In the midst of that weakness, Jesus is strong during those times. In the midst of that weakness, his strength is being made perfect in you. And you need to look in that weakness and look to him and say, I am so glad I'm strong in you. I'm so glad if a spider gets on me, Jesus is going to take care of it. He's my strength, even though I'm freaking out. Even though I'm laying in the floor screaming and cussing, he's forgiven me of that. And as I look to him, I'm going to take that self-control. I'm going to take that courage on, and it will go away more and more as I look to him. Now, trust me, I got way worse problems than spiders now, all right? My sins, my struggles, my fears. When I fear, I look to him. Look what he says next. Therefore, most gladly, I would rather boast in my infirmities that the power of Christ may rest upon me. He said, instead of boasting, I've seen heaven and what God is doing for me, I boast in my weakness because I know when I'm weak, that is when Christ is strong in my life. Therefore, he goes, I take pleasure. Now look at this. I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches. Reproach, somebody's coming against you, telling you no good. That's what Satan's doing. In my needs, whether it's money needs, relationship needs, whatever, I boast when I'm being persecuted. I boast in my distresses. I boast for Christ's sakes. He's boasting when he's failing. For when I'm weak, then I am strong. In your weaknesses, oh, buddy, you're strong. Because Jesus is strong. It's during those weaknesses his grace is flowing like crazy in your life. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is Hebrews 4:16. Therefore let us come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. In time of need, when you're fearful, when you fall and think you're no good, when Satan's against you, when you're sick, no matter what the problem is, you come to Jesus in that time of need to receive more mercy and grace. Now, as you are beholding Jesus in your weaknesses, the Holy Spirit is transforming you into his very image. We have seen when you walk away during trials, during whatever, as you keep your eyes on him, you leave stronger, you leave more affirmed, you are becoming that warrior even though you're scared to death in the moment. Because that's what your Savior's doing all the time. And I'm going to tell you something, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for his grace. I'm thankful that even though I'm striving to live right, I'm thankful that even sometimes when my light ain't shining the brightest and my witness is low, my witness is low, that his is still bright in me, even though others may not be seeing it. I'm thankful that even though I struggle with some things, that I can look to him, I know I'm going to overcome. And I don't care where you're at today. I don't care if you're struggling with some sin you may have asked God 1,000,000 times to take it away. You need to know in that sin it's showing you are coming and you need a Savior. And it's pointing you to Jesus. Your weaknesses actually are pointing you to him and his power. If you understand that and you tap into it, you'll change. You'll go from, man, I'm worthless, I can't do this, to, hey, I'm strong in him. I'm going to overcome in him. I believe it. I'm going to rise up over and over and over and over again and look to him until that strength of him is found in me. And it happens as you keep looking at him. Ain't it awesome? As we behold him, we're becoming more like him. When we fail, he's strongest in our lives. We look back to him and we start overcoming in those failures. He has this dude set up in an awesome way that his grace is absolutely bringing life to everything we got going on. And all we got to do is just keep looking to him. The problem is when we look at ourselves and we get caught up in these things of Satan. But I encourage you all, look to him. Don't get caught up in the fog of this world and the distractions. And I promise you, your life's going to get better. Because even old Paul said, even during persecutions and distress, hey, during those times, hey, Jesus is strong. Some people, they're like, we got to be distressed. They're always sad. They're always down. No, if we go through that, Jesus is going to be strong in our life. He's going to take care of it all. And I just want you all to rest in him. Hey, thank you all for watching. Hope you all have a great one. See ya.